passenger's worst nightmare. One minute, this Boeing 737 was cruising at 24,000 feet over Hawaii. The next, it lost a third of its roof. Only one person died in this bizarre incident, but the rest must have thought their time had come. They owe their lives to luck and a skillful crew. Earlier that day, a passenger boarding the aircraft spotted a small crack next to the door, but was too shy to speak up. As the Boeing reached its cruising height, its skin peeled back like a sardine can. The plane was 19 years old and had spent all its life in Hawaii, flying short hops between the islands. Maintenance crews never noticed the effect of constant takeoffs and landings. The metal panels were coming apart. Fatigue cracks were everywhere. By the end, the 737 was flying on a wing and a prayer. On August 12, 1985, Japanese Airlines Flight 123 waited at Tokyo's Haneda International Airport for the evening flight to Osaka. It was a religious holiday, and thousands were traveling home to their families. 509 passengers squeezed aboard the Boeing 747. "13 minutes later at Tokyo's Air Traffic Control Center, an emergency signal began to flash alongside the plane's image on the screen.
Oh, Tokyo, Japan Air 123, request from immediate travel. Request to return back to Haneda. Descend and maintain 220, over. Japan Air 123, confirm you are declared emergency. That's right.
The plane lurched helplessly, the pilots mystified by what had happened, but unable to let go of the controls to investigate.
But now on control. On control. Roger, understood.
As their peril dawned on them, passengers began writing farewell notes.
My darling wife, life with you has been wonderful. Children grow up to be people I'd be proud of. I never dreamed that the dinner we had last night would be our last one together.
After 32 minutes, the pilots lost the battle to keep the plane airborne. It went into a dive. One wing clipped a mountain peak, scything through trees. Then it headed straight for the next ridge. "520 people died. The worst single plane crash in history. Amazingly, 4 people survived. One was this flight attendant. Nearly a day after the accident, a 12-year-old girl was found wedged in a tree, still alive. Since 123 was a domestic flight, outside investigators wouldn't normally be called in. But it happened within weeks of the mysterious disappearance of an Air India 747 over the Irish Sea. Alarmed at the loss of 2 jumbo jets, the National Transportation Safety Board won Japanese permission to investigate.
We knew the airplane in Japan had a structural problem, and that brought into question the safety of the 747. Was there a generic flaw that we didn't know about? I believe at the time there were like 650 of them flying worldwide. That put a tremendous pressure on the United States, Boeing, FAA, and TSB to find out if there was a generic flaw that needed to be fixed. If we grounded the 747 because it had an unknown flaw, we would have had a serious international problem in transportation. So we were trying to find out what happened in Japan very quickly.
The first clue appeared within days. An amateur photographer had snapped the stricken plane as it passed overhead. A computer enhancement of the photograph appeared to show that a large part of the tail, including the rudder, was missing. The surviving flight attendant had been rushed to the hospital. From her sickbed, she recalled a loud noise at the back of the plane where she was seated. Part of the ceiling collapsed, and the cabin filled with white mist, telltale signs of an explosive decompression. As a routine measure, the NTSB examined the plane's maintenance log. They made an ominous discovery. 7 years earlier, the plane had banged its tail along the ground while landing, causing extensive damage. A Boeing maintenance crew was called in to repair it. The critical repair they made was to the rear pressure bulkhead, which resembles a huge metal umbrella laid on its side and stops pressurized air from escaping out the back of the cabin. The bulkhead was cracked in the bad landing, so the Boeing crew riveted on a new section.
So the next day when we went to the accident site, we definitely focused on the tail. It became obvious all of a sudden that this joint had been put together improperly, that there was only one row of rivets taking up two pieces of these metals. That means it was half strength, and it failed at the time it would have been predicted to fail by Tom Swift's calculations. What we call that in the business is finding the golden nugget.
The Boeing maintenance crew had mishandled the repair. They attached the new section of bulkhead with only a single row of rivets. The bulkhead was only half as strong as it should have been. Investigators concluded that years of takeoffs and landings weakened this single row of rivets. Over time, tiny fatigue fractures spread out behind each one.
And the structures engineer from Boeing, who was, I forget his exact title, but he was Boeing 747 Structures, reacted, as you would expect, very upset and concerned, because this repair and this design and everything was his responsibility at Boeing as the structure's primary person for Boeing. It was a very emotional time. It was for all of us, but certainly for him, because the realization that the people that did this repair after the accident had put it together wrong, and it was really why the airplane came down. It was very emotional, and he got very upset, and I understand why.
The official report found that 13 minutes into the flight, with air pressure at maximum, the fatigue fractures at last joined up. The bulkhead shattered. Pressurized air from the cabin blew away the tail, rudder and all, and tore out the plane's 4 vital hydraulic lines. The pilots never had a chance. Boeing admitted responsibility for its mistake. The Japanese official who approved the repair committed suicide. July 19th, 1989. The United Airlines DC-10 leaves Denver bound for Chicago and Philadelphia with 285 passengers on board. Minutes later, over Iowa, the tail engine failed, showering the countryside with debris. The crucial clue now vanished in a cornfield, like a needle in a haystack. Sitting in first class, catching a ride home to Chicago, was a United Airlines senior DC-10 captain, Denny Fitch.
We were at 37,000 feet. It was a lunch flight, and after lunch had been served, a cup of coffee was placed in front of me, and at that time they took that opportunity to turn the short subject on to watch. And very shortly after that time frame, there was a loud, muffled explosion. It wasn't that subtle thing, it was very abrupt and very loud.
It was not long after Pan Am 103 was downed over Scotland by a terrorist bomb, and I thought a bomb has gone off, and we're all gonna perish at this point.
I never even gave it a second thought. I just sat down on the floor and held on because I didn't know what it was.
I was kind of sitting sideways in the seat and had a cup of coffee in my hand. And as soon as the engine blew, with the explosion, Bill grabbed the controls. So, okay, that's taken care of it. He's going to fly the airplane.
It seemed an engine had failed, an emergency all pilots are trained for.
To lose an engine in a commercial airplane, probably that's the most trained maneuver we do in our simulators for emergency practice. And I know that our pilots are extremely proficient at operating in this fashion if it becomes necessary. And it wasn't because of that confidence in the pilots. You don't run to help. It's not necessary. They're trained for it.
I've never lost a jet engine in flight. I've been flying jets since 1968, never had an engine fail. But still, through the training we had, you just follow the procedure. And the procedure is he flies the airplane and we shut the engine down. And so that's what we started to do. And while we're in that process, then we begin to realize that the situation was worse than we thought.
Now the goddamn elevator system. Very low elevator arc rudder. Shit.
Al, you want me to slow this elevator fuel whacker?
Yeah, do whatever you can. Oh shit, now those stupid.
The aircraft seemed out of control. Denny Fitch got up to offer his help.
When I looked forward, I looked over the engineer's shoulder, and on the panel where they keep all the hydraulic equipment, or gauges for it, we have 3 hydraulic systems that are in the aircraft main systems. And all 3 quantity gauges and all 3 pressure gauges were indicating 0. Now that's an occasion you will only see on the ground at the gate with the engine shut down.
My name is Al. I'm Al Haynes.
Hi, Al, Denny Fitch.
How you doing, Denny?
Yeah, tell you what, we'll have a beer when it's all done.
Well, I don't drink, but I'll sure as shit have one. Little right turn. Little right turn. Little right turn. All right.
The first officer and the captain were both pushing on the control yoke trying to get the nose down because it was climbing and they wanted to get the nose down. And they pushed full forward, and I can distinctly remember the first officer slouched in his seat with his knee placed firmly under the control column to put even more leverage on the forward moment of it, and it wasn't affecting it at all.
Now go forward. No, now come back. You gotta lead it. You gotta lead it, or it's not gonna work. See what you can see back there, will you?
Go back and look out the wings and see what we got. Okay.
Back on that sucker. Come on, baby.
What's the hydraulic quantity?
No, 0.
All over?
All quantity's gone. Yeah, all quantity's gone.
When we fly airplanes and we want to make a turn, the device is looking from behind their ailerons, and these are located here, and they're flippers. They come up and down as necessary. But in all cases in a normal aircraft, if this one comes up to put this wing down, then this one goes the opposite direction, down to assist it. So they always work opposite each other. If one goes up, the one on this side goes down. If this goes up, then this one goes down. When I looked at it, these 2 ailerons in these 2 locations were both floating up in the same direction at the same time. And that was distinctly not normal, and obviously a confirmation of what we saw in the cockpit.
Go back. We've lost them. We have no hydraulic fluid. That's part of our main problem.
Both your inboard ailerons are sticking up.
That's
Of course I can tell.
Yeah,
I don't know that's
well, that's because we're turning maximum turn.
Yeah.
So I have some steering here.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, help. Just don't worry about it.
Yell what you want, I'll help you.
Right, close 1, put 2 up. What we need is some elevator control, and I don't know how to get it.
As a last resort, and the only thing that seemed to work, is the captain in the cockpit had the throttle for this engine pulled it to idle, the left one. This one, he pushed it to full power, and because of the location of the engine, it had a tendency to pick up this wing at maximum power. And he was having a terribly difficult time doing that because the number 2 engine, its throttle, because of the explosion and the way it failed, it jammed in the upright position. So it became an obstacle for him to operate around the other 2 throttles. I saw how difficult it was for him to do all this, And I wasn't doing anything at the time, and I said, "Captain, would you like me to do your throttles for you?" To which Captain Haynes replied, "Yes, please do that."
It just was kind of natural for him to just step in and start doing the throttles, which ended up being what flew the airplane.
Just as in Japan 4 years earlier, the plane had lost all hydraulics and flight controls. Denny Fitch thought it might be possible to maneuver the DC-10 using engine thrust.
If I wanted to go to the right, I'd reduce thrust on this engine, increase thrust on this engine, and by pushing harder on this side, the airplane would tend to go this way. Of course, the opposite was the problem. Our airplane wanted to go right all the time, and we didn't want it to. So I had to keep more power on this engine and less on this engine just to counteract this tendency to want to go this way. I was trying to keep the wings level.
Besides tending to bank to the right, the aircraft was lunging through the sky in a pattern called a fugoid.
The airplane would go like in a sine wave. It would climb, change direction, descend, then it would climb. And those magnitudes of those efforts up and down would be at 2,500 feet per minute on average, and the cycles seemed to operate at about a minute apart. So you'd finish one at the top, and then it would start down, and then you get to the bottom after a minute, and it would go back up again.
As Denny Fitch wrestled for control, the crew found themselves heading for the small town of Sioux City, Iowa.
United 232 Heavy, Sioux City.
We have no hydraulic fluid, which means we have no elevator control, almost done, and very little aileron control. I have serious doubts about making the airport.
Almost no control here. We have no hydraulic control. We're going to go to Sioux City. And we're going to try and put it into Sioux City, Iowa. Yeah. It's going to be tough. It's going to be rough.
So we're going to evacuate.
We are. Well, we're going to have the gear down. Yeah. And if we can keep the airplane on the ground and it stops standing up, give us a second or two before you evacuate.
What's going to be the...
We're down 1,500. Pull back a little more.
Brakes. The brakes will be the signal. It'll be over the PA system. Brake, brake, brake. And then if we have to evacuate, you'll get the command signal to evacuate, but I really have my doubts we'll be standing up, buddy. Good luck, sweetheart.
Heading toward Sioux City, Flight 232 was hanging by a thread.
You know, they were calm, collected, which, considering what was going on, was unbelievable.
There was no panic. It just, I don't think we knew enough to panic. We were just trying to keep the airplane flying. It's so hard to explain because everybody pictures all kinds of things going on in their mind. And it was just, what is the next step to keep this airplane in the sky? And why is it in the sky? If a situation was the way it was supposed to be, we shouldn't be in the sky.
Help it through. We know what it's doing. Back, back, back. Let's start it down. We have to ease it down. We got to ease it down.
Don't pull the spoilers on the touch.
Down, brakes, windshield.
That'll work, so we're taking equipment off the runway and we'll line up for that one.
His wheels were down, his nose were up, his wings were level. Looked like it was going to be just a fast landing. You know, he'd roll off to the end of the runway to evacuate the aircraft. And I really thought we'd all be home for supper that night. I really didn't think. Of course, it doesn't happen in your town. It doesn't happen to you.
At the end of the runway, it's just a wide open field.
Somewhere around 400 feet above the ground, and we're going so fast, the captain said, pull the power off, meaning let's get rid of some of the speed. And I said, I can't. That's what's holding your wing up.
Left turn, left turn. Close the throttle. Close them all. Left turn, close them all.
No, I can't pull them off if you'll lose it. That's what's turning you.
Okay, all right.
I looked down at the captain's vertical speed indicator, and I saw it at 1,800 feet per minute, which was intolerable. We couldn't hit that hard. And in a desperate effort, I firewalled both the engines, shoved both the throttles up to full power, and the time factor wasn't there for us.
Okay, back out.
Left throttle, left, 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 left.
I saw the corn stalks going by Captain Haynes' window, and the strangest thought crossed my mind is, my God, they really do grow up that tall in Iowa. And of course the bad news was that a normal DC-10 captain sits 22 feet in the air, and I know they didn't grow it that tall, so I knew that something bad had probably happened to our undercarriage or our landing gear. I remember tearing of metal. I remember now very loud shrieking engine noise.
Noises that you've never heard before and you hope you never hear again. It was horrendous. These strange shrieking noises.
And we went straight ahead for a period of time, and then we veered to the right into a soybean field. And it's almost as if somebody had kicked you from behind, and you could feel your body, your whole body went forward as if you were going over the top.
When we started to go over, I was like, I don't want to do this. I know this airplane is starting to roll.
I felt heat, humidity, and debris, and after that it was just one of the most, I can't begin to describe in words how violent it was after that.
I couldn't hear anything, I couldn't feel anything, I couldn't smell anything. Nothing was working except my mind. It was like total body detachment or being in a protective cocoon. I then realized that 2/3 of me was suspended in fire, and I felt this is it, this is how I'm going to go on, this is how I'm going to die. And it was the most incredibly peaceful moment I've ever known, that I was in no pain, I had no fear anymore, it was total peace.
Yes, good interviews. Get to the plane crash. Get to the plane crash.
The seriously injured were separated from the walking wounded. There was no trace of the flight crew.
They didn't find us for 30 minutes because the thing was such a big mess that they didn't think it was an occupied portion of the airplane. They thought it was the avionics compartment where all the radio gear was, because all you could see were wires and cables.
We came to rest inverted, and our second officer in his position had a hole. He was able to get a hand up and put a little bit of insulation in the air, and he kept waving it, and finally after about 30 minutes one of the rescuers saw the hand, saw the insulation, came over in his truck to look into it, and he was informed by our second officer there was 4 pilots in here. This was the cockpit.
We must not forget that 111 people perished in this accident. And to their families and their friends, I would like to say that this crew, and in fact the entire industry, is dedicated to finding the cause of this accident, so maybe we can never have it happen again.
Now this is what we call a core engine. Then up in front, I told you to look at that fan up at the other engine, and I took this and pointed at it and said, you're going to see what's missing now. That whole fan area is missing. That whole damn fan area. And this is a large piece of equipment. And when it goes, if it's spinning at a high RPM, it's got a kinetic energy that's really something. It's really something.
Investigators deduced that the tail engine's fan disc had spun out and sent shrapnel through the tail, severing the hydraulic lines and rendering the flight controls useless.
Spin stringers and so on.
But without the fan disc itself, the true cause of the crash couldn't be determined.
They had jet planes flying over with radar looking for it. And there was jets flying over this area right above the corn, big jets. I just backed the combine up, then I could see some of the blades protruding out, and I started crying because I knew how important it was.
One more.
This was a hole. I come on the combine, and the combine met with resistance. I backed up, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. This is it. I couldn't believe it. So I came to the house. Dad had gone to town with a load of corn, and then I called the sheriff's office and talked to Jerry Clark and told him. And he said, "Did you really find it?" And I said, "Yes." And he knew I was really emotionally upset, so he said, take a Valium and sit down and we'll be right out.
General Electric, the engine's manufacturer, had offered a reward for any parts that were found.
We washed off the fan disc at the turkey shed. And I said, what's this? And it was a bolt that had been sheared off. He says, that's $500. He says, don't throw that away.
The engine parts the Sorensens found earned them $120,000 in reward money, but they gave most of it to charity. The broken fan disc, similar to this new one, was examined by the NTSB's senior metallurgist, Jim Weldy.
In order to find out how the fan disc broke, it's simply a fractographic examination. That means looking at the fracture surface, trying to find the details of the fracture that lead an investigator or an experienced eye to follow the features back to an origin area. On the fan disc, the features were very easy to read. There was a radiating pattern that stemmed or emanated right from the bore of the disc, the hub portion of it, and in that area we could see there was a pre-existing fracture region that was the source of the cause of the fracture for the fan disc. This type of defect is called a hard alpha inclusion, and it's referred to as hard alpha because it's a very brittle and very hard defect inside the material.
Jim Weldy didn't see how such a defect could escape notice.
The titanium material is subject to a large number of inspections. During the manufacturing process, before they even make a part, the billets, these elongated ingots, are ultrasonically inspected. Unfortunately, if the defect that you're looking for is right adjacent to the surface, the ultrasonic inspection isn't really capable of detecting that type of anomaly.
Finally detected, the flaw in the rotor disc was the size of a grain of sand. The NTSB concluded it had been there since the disc was made, 17 years before the crash. Although the problem was born at the manufacturing stage, the NTSB's report singled out the United Airlines maintenance crew for harsh criticism for failing to spot the flaw. In the end, said the NTSB, human error was to blame, including United's. United disagrees. The Sioux City crash would spark a campaign to fix another tragic defect. For flight attendant Jan Brown, the crash at Sioux City led to a personal crusade. As she prepared passengers for the emergency landing, she went through a standard procedure showing parents how to hold their infants firmly on the floor in front of them. On impact, all the children were thrown forward up to 15 rows away. One small boy died.
That little boy would be alive today if he'd been in a seat. But because the FAA says children under 2 can fly for free and sit on a parent's lap, that's what we have.
Thankfully, crashes like the one at Sioux City are rare. Flying is still the safest way to travel.
Statistically, emotionally, any way I want to look at it, I'd much rather be upstairs than down here on a safety issue.